approaching the witness and approaching the bench.
You may have free movement along the well. You do not have to ask to approach opposing counsel. However, you must, of course, ask to approach the witness and myself.
And with that, plaintiff is ready to begin.
Thank you.
Your Honor, the defense would also like to begin with appearances. My name is Natalie Hagan, along with my co-counsel, Mr. Harrison Pyros,
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
and Mr. David Mudd.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
And today we represent TBD, and sitting in for TBD is their CEO, Ms. Sawyer Shaw.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
In accordance with Midland Rule 615, we'd like to designate Ms. Shaw as our party representative.
No objection to that, Your Honor.
Granted.
We'd also like to invoke Midland's Rule 603, which means that all witnesses have been presumptively sworn in today's case and will testify truthfully.
Granted.
And Your Honor, we also have a few documents to tender to the bench. We have a copy of the answer to the plaintiff's complaint.
Any objections?
No objection to that, Your Honor.
And along with that, Your Honor, with the documents that the plaintiff brought in today, we have a courtesy copy for the jury today.
Much appreciated. Thank you. One last request. Since we do have a jury, please be sure to direct your questioning to our jury.
Yes, Your Honor. And with that, Your Honor, the defense is ready to proceed with opening statements.
Thank you very much. Plaintiffs, you may proceed.
May it please the court. Your Honor, members of the jury, it was only a matter of time. It only took 2 years for Sawyer Shaw, the new CEO of TBD Incorporated, a news outlet in Midlands, to systematically and methodically fire every single employee over the age of 40 at the company. My client, Riley Winter, is one of the many victims of this vicious discrimination, and we are in court today to right the wrongs that have been committed. Rewind to January 2nd, 2014. Ms. Shaw becomes the brand new CEO of TBD, and at that time, my client, Riley Winter, has been writing for the company for nearly 28 years. And over a course of such an extensive career, she won multiple awards, was nominated for a Pulitzer, and continued to that day and past the day Ms. Shaw came in control of the company, one of the most valuable and lucrative assets for the company. Some of the very first words out of Ms. Shaw's mouth to her new company was, "Out with the old and in with the new." Now, many writers were likely confused by what this might have meant, but Ms. Shaw made what those statements mean very clear very quickly. She immediately fired 40% of the full-time staff, and with that, 7 of the only 10 writers over the age of 40 were immediately ushered out the door. And over the course of the next 2 years, the 3 remaining would systematically as well be removed. Ms. Shaw also changed other elements of the company. She changed TBD's format to being only online. She changed the subject content to be about puff pieces. And finally, she made sure that writers were writing shorter articles. With this, that's a lot of adaptation that a writer would have to undertake. But my client, Riley Winter, did a fantastic job. She attended social media training to up her online presence. As the hard numbers will show, Ms. Winter was meeting standards set by Sawyer Shaw in every category of statistical performance. And all of that will be shown to you today. Now, Ms. Winter's hard work, it was not met with praise. It was not met with recognition by management of TBD. Instead, for 2 years, Ms. Winter faced constant remarks, jokes, and acts of blatant discrimination that were used to turn all of her hard work against her. And it all culminated. At the end of 2 years, it was only a matter of time. Because in 2 years, Riley Winter turned 50. And all of her hard work stopped mattering. The only thing that mattered was the date on her birth certificate. We know this because she was fired by a CEO who never once read any of her articles or even evaluated a single performance review. Now, this is why we believe TBD is liable for age discrimination. But as a plaintiff, we have a burden to prove that to you today. Our burden is to prove by preponderance of the evidence, which simply means more likely than not that Miss Winter was 1, a member of a protected class, 2, that she faced some type of adverse employment action, and 3, that the primary motivation for an adverse employment action was her age. The first 2 elements of today's burden are not in contest. Us, as well as TBD, agree Miss Winter is over the age of 40, and she was in fact fired. But in order to prove that age was the primary motivator for her termination, we will call 3 witnesses. First, you will hear from Miss Winter herself, who will give an eyewitness an honest account of every single act of discrimination she faced. As well, she will verify multiple documents that prove and show multiple actions taken by the CEO and other members of management that prove that they were discriminating against her based on her age. Second, you will hear from Bobby Lynn, who is actually Ms. Shaw's personal secretary, who will elicit statements that prove Sawyer Shaw's intent to discriminate against age, as well as verify documents and show multiple actions Sawyer Shaw took against people of age that she did not take against other members of the company that were younger. Finally, you will hear from Dr. Sam Owens. Mr. Owens is an expert in best HR practices, and he will explain how Ms. Shaw, along with the rest of TBD's management, fostered an environment that made the probability of age discrimination substantially more likely. And it is after you have heard all the evidence and testimony today. It is after you return to the jury deliberation room, you will recognize that as you follow the series of events, it was only a matter of time before Ms. Winter became the final domino to fall in a series of systematic and methodically planned intentions to discriminate by TBD. Undeniable.
May I proceed? May it please the court, opposing counsel, members of the jury. TBD has been pioneering the cultural journalistic field for nearly 50 years. The content it produced was fresh, innovative, exciting, and oftentimes revolutionary. But as the years went by, TBD had started to slip on the downward slope. People were afraid that TBD was soon going to slip into nothingness altogether, until Sawyer Shaw came along with a new vision and revived the company. But, members of the jury, the reason we are here today is because within this new and more profitable TBD, some people were unable to adapt and unwilling to change. And as the evidence will show you today, one of those people is here, Ms. Riley Winter. The story starts in 2014 with TBD magazine in the red, losing both readership and money at an alarming rate. Things looked pretty bad for TBD and its senior staff writer Riley Winter, until Sawyer Shaw came along and bought the company with a new passion for new media and saved it. Under Ms. Shaw's leadership, not only did she take TBD out of the red, but in under 2 years was grossing an enormous profit. Ms. Shaw's decision to switch from print media to digital media made TBD available to anyone, anywhere, at any time, for free. Ms. Shaw saved jobs, she increased salaries, and most of all, she made TBD a cultural and relevant icon again. So, Ms. Shaw changed TBD, and within changing TBD, she saved it. But within this new world, and its new media, and well, its new TBD, the evidence will show you today that Riley Winter simply couldn't adapt to this change. The testimonies and the evidence brought forth to you today, members of the jury, will prove to you that Ms. Winter was not fired because of her age, but simply because she failed to adapt. She failed to meet expectations. And the reason we are here today is because Ms. Winter believes to have been fired because of her age, and not because she cannot meet standards. You'll hear from Head of Human Resources at TBD, Ms. Skye Martin, and she can attest to you of the performance evaluations she conducted of Ms. Riley Winter, and about how she consistently failed to hit the target demographic. She can also attest to Riley Winter's attitude around the office and her outright refusal to attend social company events that were essential in the team building at TBD and in TBD's success. Next, you will hear from Dr. Victoria Fogel, an expert in data analytics and in the transition of print media to digital media. From Dr. Fogel, you will learn that Ms. Winter, compared to her colleagues, was dipping below the radar in terms of job performance, and that Ms. Winter's angry remarks about Sawyer Shaw and Sawyer Shaw's new TBD were not only unfounded, but ignorant. Finally, you will hear from CEO Sawyer Shaw herself and how she saved and continued to improve TBD. Ms. Shaw can attest to you today her own perceptions about Riley Winter's job performance, how Riley Winter was the highest paid writer at TBD, but was only producing average and below average results. And finally, Ms. Shaw will tell you about the conflict that Riley Winter caused between a major advertiser turntable that nearly lost millions of dollars in ad revenue. Members of the jury, today the plaintiff has the burden of proof, which means they have to prove to you beyond a preponderance of the evidence 3 elements. While the defense does not contest the claims of the first 2, the plaintiff will fail to meet its third, and that is that Riley Winter was discriminated against due to her age, because members of the jury, you'll find this is simply not the case. And at the end of today's trial, my co-counsel, Ms. Natalie Hagan, will come before you today and ask you find TBD not liable. Members of the jury, I have one simple question for you. If a person is unwilling to adapt, unable to change, and not doing their job, do they deserve to keep that job? Find TBD not liable. Thank you.
You may call your first witness.
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff calls his first witness, Riley Winter, to the stand. May I proceed? Can you please introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Riley Winter.
What do you do for a living?
Well, currently I am unemployed, but in my heart I will always be a journalist.
Do you have a background in the field of journalism?
Absolutely. I started at TBD in 1998 as a junior copy editor. 5 months later, I was promoted to copy editor, and then in 1990 I was promoted to staff writer, and then in 1997 I was promoted again to senior staff writer. I held this position until I was fired on December 23rd.
With such a long career, Ms. Winter, did you ever win any awards?
Absolutely. My most notable are from the American Association of Journalists. They named me Culture Writer 3 times, as well as the Thoughtful Young Leaders Assembly. They also named me that from 2000 to